Greetings, brothers and sisters. I don't know what I'm going to get to today. There's some more JoJo stuff. One of my commenters noticed that I sort of predicted the droning. I wouldn't call it a prediction, but I'm going to replay that segment of the video from a couple days ago because it's important to understand they're just laying it all out there. And I want to contrast the difference between organizations that want sheep and organizations that want lions, or people that want sheep and people that want lions in terms of their students, right? When you're a teacher, do you want lions or do you want sheep? Because there are some leaders that want sheep and some organizations that want sheep, and then there's others that want lions, and it's a substantial difference. And so I want to start off before we get to the JoJo thing, in terms of how to be hopeful about what seems to be a very dark and dim and gloomy period we're in, right? We're in what seems to be a very depressing time to live in. But there is hope and not hopium. Like the difference between hope and hopium is believing in something that you psychologically convince yourself can happen or is happening, and it isn't, right? So that's false hope. And real hope, true hope, would be seeing something that is happening and can happen and hoping that it goes in that direction. Like that's a possible pathway. And the one thing that keeps me, I don't want to say hopeful, but positive, is that I know there's so much unlocked potential in every human being. Like I've seen it in my own life doing the heartfulness meditation. There is this, what they used to call junk DNA, this, genetic material that seems to be, not serving any purpose. We've heard that human beings are only using like 10%, 15% of our brain capacity, for example. And then there's this DNA, there's all this dormant unrealized potential. And I could see the way my own consciousness has changed from having, internal contact with the divine, with God, through the heartfulness meditation as an instrument. The heart is an instrument, and the system as a enhancer, of this connection. And what it does to a person as you evolve and as you move forward on your spiritual evolutionary path, as you evolve as a soul, as a spiritual being in your subtle bodies, not as a physical human being, not evolving physically or even mentally, but spiritually. And so when when there is this willingness from human beings, or just a person, it starts off individually, you have to make your individual choice, and you submit to the divine, you submit to God, you give up your freedom of choice, and you follow the dictates of the divine essence in your soul. When your ego surrenders to your soul and you embrace your spiritual nature and you become more mature and you become more reliable, you're given more information and more power. You're given more work by God. If you do that work successfully, then you're given more and more power and more work. With the idea that the power is a tool that you pick up and use because God told you to pick it up and use it, but it's not your power. See, human beings have a real problem with power. They have a real problem with control and power and control. My wife and I were watching the movie The Courier. That guy, Benjamin Cumberbatch, Benedict Cumberbatch. He's just a great actor. Like I've seen him in the, whatever he's in, he's a very convincing, an actor that can really, you forget about the acting, right? You believe that this person is what they're pretending to be. And the whole movie's like that. It's a well-done movie. And it's about the Cuban Missile Crisis and Russia and England and America, MI6 and CIA and the oppressive Russian regime. And, of course, they make the CIA and the MI6 look like heroes and the Russians look like villains. That's the way they're going to, portray this. But, both sides, when you understand just having nuclear weapons, and you understand what JoJo Magoo's doing, I'm going to get into that more as we go through this video, it is a huge power grab that governments inevitably grab more and more control and power over your life as a person, because people get obsessed with power. When somebody gets obsessed with money, $1 trillion isn't enough, right? When somebody gets obsessed with something, they just have more and more of it. You see this with addicts and addictions. Well, you think, all right, one experience or a moderate level experience, like when people drink a beer, a couple beers, every 3 or 4 days or something like that, this type of behavior is, to do it in moderation. But human beings struggle with moderation. If something is good, people want more and more of it. If something appeals to them, and then their addiction to it, their obsession with it, takes hold over them. And so they just keep on grabbing more and more of it. And they find excuses, and, they manifest a reality in which, oh, we need to get more and more power. There's a reason we need more power and control over our people. They're going to destroy our government, right? And that's how it is with the CIA and the MI6 and all these governments, Mossad and all these various intelligence agencies. They get hooked into this game, and winning the game, they start breaking all kinds of moral rules, and, you lose sight of what you're fighting for. You're fighting for what? American freedoms, but you're taking more and more freedoms away from people. And I've talked about in the Heartfulness Meditation, it's the freedom from freedom, where you no longer have the choice to do wrong. Because freedom is really having the choice to do wrong, right? Like when people are mature enough to realize that they have very limited choices. There's only one right choice in every situation, and that's the choice of the soul. Every other choice is deviant in some way. It deviates from your spiritual path. It takes you off your spiritual path to whatever extent. Sometimes you go backwards. Sometimes you go a little bit to the left. Sometimes you go a little bit to the right. Sometimes, you go straight down, whatever it is. But those deviant choices are not following your spiritual path and your soul. And, people who are attuned to this recognize it. But you see with these governments, they're obsessed with power. Human beings have a problem with power. And when you become spiritual in nature and you work for God and you become more and more mature, you have power, but you realize it isn't your power. It's not yours. It's not yours to keep. At some point, it'll be taken away from you, certainly when you die, but usually before that. And it's good, right? It's something that you're using for God. You're using, to do your work that God's instructed you to do. And that you always have to remember that. See, there's with the unlocking of human potential, it said this in the Heartfulness Whispers of the Brighter World, and one of the messages from Babaji, the powers that be, the divine forces, these higher developed souls that are, working on the spiritual evolution and the growth of this planet, working for God to, bring this planet into some harmonious divine orientation of the people and the creatures here, right? Getting it back online again, because we are, we've gotten off track here in the Kali Yuga. There's lots of knowledge and, even technology in one way or another. There's all these aspects to human potential that they want to unlock so that human beings are able to rise up to a higher level. But right now, because of our immaturity and our selfish orientation, we would misuse the information. Our leadership, people in general, would misuse the information and the technologies and things. And so human beings are, this information can't be made available to people because of our immaturity and our, obsession with power and addictive nature and things. But it's there for people, right? I've experienced it personally, and I've seen it in others, and I know that human beings can rise to a higher level. I've seen it even, I work with teenage sex offenders in 2 different treatment centers. And these were like sort of the dregs of society, just really bad kids coming from horrible backgrounds. But there were times where they would step up and show empathy and show a higher nature. Everyone has a higher nature. Everyone has a soul. Everyone has, a self with a capital S within that can emerge, right? And there have been many examples of people who, were saints, higher developed spiritual beings that have risen up to a high level. And so we know it can be done, right? But this idea to control everything, all these groups, these governments are cowards, right? They can't let things take their natural course. The people that run the system, they're going against the divine will and the natural order of things. So they can't let things run their course. I talked about this very extensively in my book, The Choice. The people that run the system can't let go and just allow, everything to, the lies to come out and, the debt-based system to collapse. I mean, right now they have to control more and more of what happens because the system should be failing right now. The system is failing. They're just not acknowledging it. The system isn't sustainable. They know it. They're going to lose their grip on their grip on humanity. They're going to lose their hold. They're going to lose their wealth. They're going to lose all of these things. And so they need to control everything, the information, they have to, make people stupider. I mean, it's just, they have to cultivate the remedial, right? Their audience is the remedial, the sheeple. They have to cultivate a sheep-like humanity. This is what I was talking about earlier, the difference between sheep and lions. And I want to come back to this later. I started talking about this in a video yesterday. And so you see it, right? They're dumbing down their message because their system is failing, and it's just a cowardly way to go out. Because sometimes you just got to surrender to your fate, right? You have a fate, you have a death, you have an end to your existence, things end. And at some point, this idea, he's beating cancer. You're not beating cancer, right? You're not beating death. Like, it's just stupid. Like it's some, competition. It's just a very, very immature way of looking at life and death and, our purpose here on planet Earth. That you're given tasks by God, and when it's a divine task, it's going to succeed. If you have faith, if you have, courage, if you have love in your heart, you can succeed in your divine task. You have faith in God and faith in yourself, and God gives you abilities and a purpose, and you fulfill your purpose, and then you go somewhere else. Your soul leaves your body and goes somewhere else, right? It's just, it shouldn't be that serious. It's not some big deal. Death shouldn't be something you dread. It's just, it's a release from this prison-like planet that people, that your soul is encapsulated in a human body with its many flaws and, a humanity that's sort of on the ropes right now. And so it isn't some tragedy when you leave this world, So let's go to this thing with JoJo Magoo. And there's some things on Kamal I want to talk about as well. Okay, so I went to eat lunch. I did the introduction, the voiceover. I'm starting off a little bit slow today. I'm behind schedule. But there was a breaking story that ties into what I'm going to show you. There's evil. Like, I don't really, use the word evil that much and talk about evil, but there's evil here. And, I try to make light of stuff, but there's some evil stuff I want to talk about. And so this is the tail end of the hurricane. There's a Category 4 hurricane that's heading for the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, and Alabama.
A lot of the wind gets here, it will be dark, and that's a real dangerous time to be outside. I've been to Cafe Du Monde 3 times, and it's been closed all 3 times because they close it for hurricanes, Wolf. So I've never had a beignet yet.
Oh, he's never had beignet. Look at this poor guy. Never beignet. He's been there to Louisiana, and they're closing the cafe because of hurricanes. People are going to have their lives ruined. And this poor Satsak's never had beignet because every time he gets to go down there, it's a hurricane and they're closed. Come on, Wolf, give some inspirational words to this deprived beignet-less CNN employee.
I've had a beignet. I've been there at several occasions. It's a great, exciting place to be, and eventually we'll get back to normal. So we'll have a good time over there. Right now, it's a good time to stay.
Yeah, not everybody, right? There's a major storm coming here. They're talking about beignets. And, the Afghanistan disaster and COVID. And these two guys, we gotta have our priorities.
Stay away from that area. All right, Chad, we're going to get...
And in a surprise to no one, the beignet-less dude whining about not having a beignet, his name is Chad. The CNN weatherman who's in the eye of a hurricane in an area that's been devastated by hurricanes in recent years, and he's whining about not ever having a beignet. His name is Chad.
Stay away from that area. All right, Chad, we're going to get back to you. We're staying on top of Hurricane Ida. It's going to be a Category 4 storm. Much more coming up on that. We're also, though, following breaking news out of Afghanistan right now. The U.S. is carrying out an airstrike against a suspected ISIS-K suicide bomber inside Kabul. Our CNN international security editor, Nick Payton-Walsh, is joining us from Doha, Qatar, our correspondent.
And so that means a bomb. They dropped a bomb in the city.
Oren Lieberman is over at the Pentagon, and our chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins, is joining us from the White House. Oren, you're at the Pentagon. What do we know, first of all, about this U.S. drone strike?
The strike was carried out by a drone over the horizon.
So I'm in the editing process, and you'll hear me later on. I'm going to stumble about what this Operation Over the Horizon. So I forgot about that, but I missed it here. The guy actually says it. This is when the media is using the military and Biden's talking points. They're calling this over the horizon. Look, kids, over the horizon. What's that? I don't know. I think it's a drone, Dad. Oh, shit. Right? Somewhere. Right? Over the horizon.
The strike was carried out by a drone over the horizon, meaning the drone was not based in Afghanistan but came in probably from a base in the Gulf, carrying out a strike against a car with explosives. Now, the initial information was that there was a secondary source of explosions, meaning there were explosives on board that car that triggered an even larger explosion, which is part of the information that led the U.S. to believe that they had hit their target. But it is unclear at this point, according to defense officials that we've spoken with, whether it was a car bomb, a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, or whether there were one or more suicide bombers on board that car ready to carry out.
They did it again. These guys are precision. They just get it done. Every time they get their man, and they don't hurt any civilians. They don't bomb they don't drone civilians. They got the bomber. They got the planner, and now the bomber. Ba-boom, ba-boom. 2 days with their drones, showing you that their new strategy is working, that we never needed to go to war in the first place. We could drone our way to freedom.
What U.S. Central Command called an imminent threat to the airport. That information still being assessed at this point, but the defense officials are sure that they hit a valid target because of the explosives on board. So we're looking to see more information about that, as well as Central Command assessing reports of...
Okay, so I wanted to show you this because it's integral to the evil. So this is my video from 3 days ago. Epic must-see JoJo Magoo gets owned for his greasy press conference. And somebody left a comment saying, I called it or I predicted it. I said, what are you going to do, drone him? And I'll show you that clip. But there's something even more here. It was an almost a 2-hour video, an hour and 46-minute video. And even with the length of this video, I missed important pieces. I mean, it just comes out more and more because their message is simple. It's for simple sheeple, right? They're targeting sheeple to believe their, rhetoric here. And the message that they're putting out is simple, but what's behind it is so complex and insidious. So let's start here. I'm talking about that they are now saying they're leaving troops behind. So this is the point of the video where I'm talking about how, and this is an hour and 9 minutes into it. Now after this attack, JoJo Magoo is able to come out and say, this is why we need to get as many troops out as soon as possible, and leave Americans behind, which was unthinkable the day before or any time before that. But now that they've conducted this operation, they're able to somehow push this, bizarre and un-American agenda through. So just to avoid confusion, I am about to push play here, and this is the video I made 2 days ago. After the troops have left. I mean, that's what he just said. We're going to leave Americans behind, and we'll find them and get them out, right? After this event that just happened that showed that they're not safe and Americans are being targeted by a group that somehow the Taliban can't control and who are sworn enemies of the Taliban in America, he just said, leaving Americans there. And this is, nobody's covering this, what he just said. This is an epic statement on his part. Like a complete, shit show, right? Shit storm. And they're just leaving that on the table.
They gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC.
Again, he's talking about receiving instructions from a handler, because he's the president and he's told to call on certain people. And so that, given JoJo's mental capacity, that means they're pre-screening the people. Now, I missed this in the original video. I mean, I was just so long and I'm focusing on other things. But he says this, he said this at G7. I'll get in trouble if I don't call the list in the order that it's presented, because his answers are written down for him in the order of the questioner. And there was a person he called on by mistake, and the person asked him a real question. Remember, from this video, you can see that later on. But he's been ordered to call people in a certain order, and he gets in trouble, like his own words, if he doesn't do so.
You have said leaving Afghanistan is in the national interest of the United States. After today's attack, do you believe you will authorize additional forces to respond to that attack inside Afghanistan? And are you prepared to add additional forces to protect those Americans who remain on the ground carrying out the evacuation operation?
I've instructed the military, whatever they need, if they need additional force, I will grant it. But the military, from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the commanders in the field, have all contacted me one way or another, usually by letter, saying they subscribe to the mission as designed.
By letter? We have this thing now called the internet. I just want to cut in here. That's from the video. But also what I was pointing out is these guys that he's talking to have conducted a debacle of a war, wasting $2 trillion, arming the Taliban, who JoJo Magoo, because I showed you clips in this video of him saying there needed to be regime change and get rid of the Taliban and put in a friendly government. Now he says he's not about nation building. But when this war started, he was. And these military geniuses all conducted this war for other reasons, right? The opium and the military-industrial complex, and because the economy, the debt-based economy, was failing. Those were the real reasons. I mean, there's all these other, deeper reasons, the real reasons that they're doing this. But then there's what they told the American public, and they failed. What they said they were going to do, and the reasons they told us they were going in there have clearly failed. And whether you believe the official story or not, failure is evident, right? They have failed, and he's going, well, I'm talking to these guys who managed this failure for the last 20 years, and they're saying we don't, they don't have a success rate, right? Why would you trust them? But that's not the evil part. The evil part's coming up.
Tracking down the ISIS leaders who ordered this.
With what? There's no military there in Afghanistan. You're going to drone them?
You're going to drone them?
You're going to drone them? You're going to drone them? Like the Taliban are there on the ground and they're sworn enemies and they can't find them? And you're saying that you're going to find them with no military presence over there. So this is me now. This is the second cursor. I'll keep it moving when I'm talking in real time. Big giant cursor, circling the other big giant cursor. I have to do something different now to produce the big giant cursor, so it isn't as fun for me as it used to be. But it still exists. But anyways, so me saying, are you going to drone them? Now I'm kind of predicting what he's going to do there, in the sense that when I made this original video, I'm showing you he hadn't yet droned anybody there. He was going to drone him the next day. And so based on what he's saying here, I say, what are you going to do, drone him? So in a way, it's sort of predicting what he's going to do, but not really. Like there's being prophetic, and there's times where like I just know what's going to happen, either pattern recognition or something God shows me. I mean, there's times in my life where I see how something's going to play out, and this is on a national scale, but it happens more often in my own life or the lives of my family members, where I just have just this sense of the way things are going to play out. Not, I don't think it's necessarily seen into the future. I don't know what it is. But here, what he's saying is that droning is their only option, right? Basically, their only option. So it isn't like I was predicting what happened, because someone left a comment saying, yeah, you said it, and the next day they drone people. Well, that was the only recourse they're going to have in this new over-the-horizon, whatever the F they're calling it, right? This horizon movement, something to do with the horizon. I've already forgotten about it. I covered it yesterday. But it's droning people. That's what they're going to do, right? That's the new warfare, and that's what he's saying. Instead of going in there and having troops and being on the ground, we're going to drone people. And it's evil, and I'm going to tell you why in just a second. Let's finish this up here first.
We have some reason to believe we know who they are. Not certain.
They're not certain. They don't even know, but he's going to get them.
And we will find ways of our choosing without large military operations to get them. Wherever they are.
They're in Afghanistan. Like that, a country you're leaving right now. So I want to put that joke in there. He said, wherever they are, they're in Afghanistan. That's where you created this. Now, there's a lot of lies behind this. I'm going to come back to this in 2 days when they leave Americans behind, because they already told us they're going to do it. And in this press conference, he's telling us they're going to drone people. Like, he's already saying what they're going to do. They already had the plan on the table. It was part of the speech the day before. And then this speech, they introduced I-6K because they knew there was going to be a drone strike. And this is all a part of changing the narrative and allowing JoJo Magoo to leave people behind. But I want to talk about the behavior, because one of the things that I say here that I don't think other people cover, and I think it's a very, it's an important thing for people in the so-called truth community to know. I say it all the time when truthers are fighting, or when people are complaining, that people are not against behaviors when it's their guy doing it, right? So an example of this would be, if Trump did this, the left and the left media would be hammering him. They would be all over him for this failure. They would be treating him differently for the same behavior, right? And so this is JoJo Magoo getting a pass from the media and being supported by most of the media, but Trump wouldn't be for the same behavior. You're either against a behavior or you're not. And so what is this behavior that he's talking about here? Think about this behavior, because we know Obama liked to drone people as well. And droning is the most cowardly warfare that we've ever seen. I mean, bombs in general, bombing people is cowardly, but the drones is like, the person droning them is literally playing like a video game. It doesn't even seem like real human beings. If you see what the person who's operating the drone sees, it's not even like real human beings, and they can be, like 1,000 miles away. I mean, who knows how close they are even to the drones. I mean, the drones can be, deployed in this sort of robotic warfare. And what they're saying, and the UN, of course, which should have a problem with this, doesn't, but they should, is that this guy that nobody trusts, I mean, they wouldn't want Trump having this kind of power, and that's, this is one of the reasons they got rid of Trump, is that this guy, I mean, it's not really him, it's his handlers, the American military, and more appropriately the CIA and the intelligence community, they gather information on somebody, and they decide whether their information is accurate, and then they decide to kill the person without a trial, without a person's ability to defend themselves. I mean, we're talking about a country, America, that has due process, right? The presumption of innocence, and you're being tried by a jury of your peers, right? This is the American justice system. And it doesn't work great. I mean, there's problems with our justice system, but it's a hell of a lot better than this. And this is what the Cubies wanted. Remember when the Cubies wanted Trump to conduct secret military tribunals and execute people without a public trial and throw people in Guantanamo Bay because the Cubies were just crazy and they had been worked up with their, sheepleness and whatever it was. But this is what we're talking about here, this type of behavior where this guy, and his, his clowns, these military cowards and these generals and these, these CIA and people who work in the shadows are conducting a trial within their organization, and they are saying that, they should have the power to decide life or death over somebody, in a foreign country, going to a foreign country. It's not the foreign country, and the person isn't attacking America. They're saying they might or whatever it is. This is, the story they're telling us. And they can just drop a cowardly missile from a little flying, practically invisible drone that's overhead, maybe hitting families, maybe, missing the target, maybe having collateral damage, and taking out people without any sort of due process. And the UN is allowing America to do this, and this is their new warfare. Not having military presence on the ground where you're talking to locals and, all this type of behavior, and just choosing to execute people that you're not really at war with, right? Individual people in any country. And if they do it here, they can do it in America. Like they don't like my video, and they could make up some BS about me and, send a drone through my window while I'm talking right now. Like that could happen to you, right? You're giving these MNFers, these immoral, this slimy lizard of a person, the power, and he doesn't, it's his handlers, the greasy and despicable CIA intelligence community and the military that's developed all these weapons of mass destruction, and they have to create wars to justify the wars and enemies to justify the massive military expenditures that are being spent by our government on weapons of all kinds. The obsession with defense and protection and control, even though we're all dying, right? At some point you gotta, you can't protect yourself from death. That's a big part of the COVID problem. Like at some point you got to realize that, things happen, like death happens. Sometimes there's big die-offs in populations, human and other types of species. And so think about this evil behavior, that they're just executing people from the sky in these, secretive, immoral organizations, making up whatever they want and just murdering people and selling it to the American people that they're heroes and they're protecting us. And all of how the greasy this particular event was, where JoJo was backed up against the ropes. He creates, he rolls out this idea of ISIS-K. The next day there's an attack from ISIS-K. The following day there's a bombing. And then the next day, today, there's another droning. And both times they were impeccable. And they're now saying, wow, this is how we should have fought this war all along, droning people from the sky instead of spending $2 trillion and getting bogged down in Afghanistan and opening up the opium production, where the opium ends up in America and causes an opioid crisis, right? And just the evil here. That's just all evil, right? Lying, evil MNFers. Lying, evil MNFers. So one of my viewers sent me this, and I have something more from the New York Post, but it says here, Kamala Harris, unprecedented negative rating, and America just doesn't have a good feeling about Vice President Kamala Hairless. And Vice President feeling thermometer, this is from MSNBC News poll, Al Gore had 47 positive, 24 negative. Dick Cheney, 48 positive, 25 negative. I don't know how anybody, Dick Cheney was, in my opinion, much eviler than Kamala. Joe Biden, 38%. Look at Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden he was less popular than Al Gore and Dick Cheney. And he had 30% negative, but he still had a overall positive rating. Mike Pence, it was kind of even, -1. Kamala has a -9. 30% positive, 40% negative, very positive, 19%, very negative, 36%, with an overall negative rating of 17%. Because she was unelectable. Nobody liked her. Kamala was a complete disaster as a candidate. I said it over and over again. I saw it. People didn't connect to her. They didn't like the way she carried herself. She was obnoxious, right? And now, they have this guy who's going crazy, this guy whose mind is deteriorating in front of us, and they're left with Kamala, who doesn't have any sort of, the only thing that Kamala and Joe Biden had were that people were, a lot of people hated Trump. That was their one saving grace in this, whatever it was, right? The hatred for Trump. Trump is gone, and now there's just this, the way that they handled this election, they have a guy who's, even Joe Biden, he wasn't popular as a vice president with a very popular president. Obama was fairly popular, at least in the beginning. And so, Joe Biden he was always a guy that people didn't really like. He had some support, some followers, but Kamala's even worse. And then there's this wonderful headline, Kamala Harris's cackling is Joe Biden's job security. I've talked about her cackle before. I had a whole video where I had a bunch of times where she was cackling. And it's pretty brutal. It's, very unpleasant. And it's just a part of why people don't like her.
Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about two things. First, Afghanistan.
A video of Vice President Kamala Harris chuckling at reporters has gone viral as some criticize her tone and Asia trip amid the U.S. pullout of Afghanistan. She was cackling with the disaster that's going on in Afghanistan, right? The cackle is bad, but the way where she does it, she laughs inappropriately. Apparently, she thinks it's a laughing matter. This is just, how it's going to be. How has she not trained that laugh away yet? Right? Kamala Harris says the administration couldn't have a higher priority than Afghanistan. Is that why she's in Vietnam on a foreign trip and Joe Biden has been on vacation half the time? And so these are mostly Republicans, or all Republicans. But Kamala Harris is, a disaster for the Democrats. So the way they handle this election, I don't know why they picked JoJo Magoo. Maybe they, this is part of bringing the country down and in some ways more divisive. But whatever their reasoning is, America is, not going to be happy, right? At some point, even the Democrats are going to start bailing on him. And Kamala Harris is never going to be liked. She just doesn't have it in her. And when she's out there on a regular basis and screwing up, and she just doesn't know how to handle herself. She doesn't know how to be likable. It's not one of her skills. Joe Biden doesn't know how to be likable either, but it's not, he doesn't do as many things that just irritate people. And Kamala Harris coming in as a historic figure, the first Asian woman, the first Jamaican woman, the first woman, right? So you have a person that's, a different sort of ethnicity and sex than the normal president. And so she's a historic figure coming in with all the, the Trump fans who are just so, the Trump people and the Republicans who dislike her more than they dislike Joe Biden, and just what's going on in the world and her handling of what happened on the Mexican border. All of it, right? She's just, she's done. There's no way for her to ever sort of capture a positive opinion from the American people. She's been judged, and it isn't something she's capable of turning around. So I was looking up this Over the Horizon with Joe Biden, Operation Over the Horizon. And it says here, this is one of the things that came up, is a Kamala Harris presidency on the horizon. So JoJo's giving it to the, people in the Middle East over the horizon, and Kamala's sneaking in on the horizon. Right? So that's funny. So I just want to wrap this thing up here. What I was saying earlier about lions versus sheep. And you can see that the message that is coming out from the mainstream media and the Biden administration is targeted at sheeple and dumbed down people who don't really have the ability for critical thinking skills and are just looking for the government and the media to tell them what to do. They're freaked out, they're fear-based, and they want the government and the establishment and some all-powerful organization to tell them how they can be all right, how they can be safe, and what they need to do. They're not questioning a government that's lied to them over and over again, that's failing, right? Like every major aspect of the system, the financial markets, that was, the failed financial markets in 2008, they hired the very same people. They gave the power to the very same people to fix the problem they created. They keep on doing that, right? The whatever it is, the science, or in this case, the military-industrial complex, they keep on saying, all right, what do we need to do now? And we're just looking at a 20-year failure and, $5 to $6 to $7 trillion of war money that's been wasted in the past 20 years. And then all the lives that have been ruined. But these sheep will just keep on bowing down to these guys. And these guys are, weaponizing the sheeple. They're saying that anybody questioning them is keeping the sheeple unsafe. That when we bring up reasonable questions and point out, factual misdeeds by these MNFers, that they say that we're the problems and we're making everyone worse and unsafe, whatever it is, whether it has to do with this war or COVID or any number of things. And the sheeple are all angry at, anybody with critical thinking skills or the ability to see through the BS, because it's easy to see through it. And I'm going to cover this much more in 2 days. I mean, it's going to come back around in 2 days when they leave Americans in Afghanistan. And it's not so much them doing it for me. I mean, certainly if you're, it's your relatives, I mean, of course. But for me, it's about how they got this thing done and how the media just played in on it, with this, bogus, contrived event that happened and this new way that they're rolling out the future of war for America is going to be droning people. I mean, just this evil act of killing people without any sort of a trial, any sort of oversight. Like, you need oversight, right? Who's making sure a government that has a long history of murdering people? I mean, just look at the last wars. Destroying Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, and leaving these places a mess. So there needs to be some sort of oversight, like the UN or some other. And again, I'm not saying the UN's good. I'm just saying, if you're going to have these little sort of techies, I mean, they have these video game heads in the military now that are flying these drones over civilian locations all around the globe, and they're going to start bombing people's houses or whatever it is where they're kids. And I mean, whatever, even if there's somebody who is doing something that America doesn't like, they're doing it in a foreign country, right? The American can just go to any country and claim the person is a part of ISIS-K and drone them. That's evil. That, I don't care what kind of fear you have as American, because you're too weak-minded to see that your administration's lying to you. That, if you believe in this being a good thing, you deserve everything you're going to get, right? I mean, you deserve everything you're going to get anyway, But I mean, just saying you suck. You suck as a human being, thinking it's okay for a government to just go do that, to have that kind of power, like I said earlier, where you have, power over life and death for ordinary people, and you're making decisions based on the collective without any sort of, and God is the ultimate. I mean, God is the ultimate oversight, even more so than some governmental or UN body or something that always gets corrupt and always ends up going to the dark side. When you're in contact with God, if you are sitting there like you're a drone operator and you're over some, I don't know, barbecue or something, and you're looking down with your missile-armed drone, and the government, the Army, your commanding officer says, fire on those people over there, you should be like, F you. This isn't right. I mean, of course, you'd be court-martialed, but in terms of your connection to God, you wouldn't feel okay about doing it. You would know that it was wrong. And so this is why they want sheeple. They want obedient sheeple, because the system can't handle anybody with critical thinking skills. They have to weed all those people out. And so they're just waiting for the older generations to die out, and they've got these kids indoctrinated, dumbed down, entitled, and weak on every level, and screwed up with, mental illnesses and all this stuff, and their weird social environment they've created. I mean, all the things that we shake our heads at, these kids are buying into, and they're embracing the agenda. And so in the Heartfulness Meditation, the first master of the system, Lalaji, said he wanted lions and not sheep. And I don't have the direct quote, but he said basically, I want lions, but I'll allow sheep to be here just out of courtesy, just out of etiquette, right? That he would, he wasn't going to make sheep leave, right? But he didn't want them. Like, I don't want them. And I'm talking about truther sheep that just think they know things that they don't, and they follow whatever, I mean, anybody who behaves and whatever, is just doesn't complain and just listens, and, they can disagree all you want. In fact, I encourage you to be a lion and think for yourself, right? I don't want sheep to watch my videos. I mean, these aren't sheep-friendly videos, right? If you're not willing to be a lion, you're not willing to think for yourself, you're not willing to be able to have the strength to accept the world as it is, both the spiritual aspect of it, the glorious spiritual aspect of it, and the, really the nightmare of our current civilization and our system. If you're not willing to see that for what it is, you're going to have trouble watching these videos. If you're going to be one-issue people that think you know something and be obsessed with it, and every time you hear something that contradicts that, I got a whole comment video to make about that, so I'm not going to go on about that here. But it's the difference between being a lion and being a sheep. And right now, it's easier to live in the system if you're a sheep, but they're culling sheep. I mean, it's better for you to be a sheep in some ways right now, the way the system is going. But when the system starts to, show its full weakness, which is, the collapse is on its way, the collapse is happening. And so when that, is just obvious to everyone, I think it's somewhat obvious. The way that it's going now, the sheep are like, oh, wow, the collapse happening. Save us, Biden. Save us, UN, right? Save us, doctors. Save us, whatever it is, right? That's what sheep are doing, because they are looking for some authority, especially the ones that don't believe in God, and, they think they're educated and smart, but they're just weak and unable to think for themselves. And so that's something that right now is the preferred demographic of the powers that be. But the people that survive this thing and the people of the future are going to have to be lions. They're going to have to connect to God. They're going to have to learn to think for themselves and make the right decisions and take responsibility for themselves and turn this MNF ship around. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.